Hallo liebe Leute, Dr. Dexter hier. Willkommen! Es geht los! Wir haben Dezember gewartet, haben nichts bekommen, haben dafür die Pleite des Jahres bekommen, Cyberpunk. Ich hab's gezockt, war nicht so ein gutes Spiel, aber naja gut, kann man ja nicht wissen. Dafür haben wir jetzt Path of Exile im Januar. Und gleich geht's los. In einer Minute kriegen wir jetzt die also nicht nur die Erweiterung, also jede 3 Monate gibt es ja eine Erweiterung in Path of Exile, sondern das Besondere im Path of Exile ist, dass es immer zu Dezember-Update, also einmal im Jahr, normalerweise im Dezember, jetzt eben wegen der Verschiebung im Januar, ein Riesen-Update gibt. Also quasi eine Erweiterung, könnte man sogar sagen. Also kein Patch mit neuem Content, sondern wirklich eine richtige große Erweiterung. Und da wird beim letzten Mal wurde der Atlas komplett neu gebaut, also da wurde der neue Endboss eingeführt mit den ganzen Mechaniken und. Und ja, das erhoffen wir uns diesmal auch, dass es diesmal auch so ähnlich krass wird wie beim letzten Mal. Und ja, denke mal, es geht los. Schauen wir uns das mal an. Ich hoffe, der Sound passt. Ich weiß jetzt nicht, ob diese Trailer. Oh ja.
Beware what you ask, Nomad. Curiosity is a charming trait until it is not. Information will be volunteered, not coerced. It will create more questions than it answers. When at last their shadow is cast upon the firmament, it will take more than you can possess to bind and silence the screams within your mind.
125.000 Leute schauen zu.
Hi, I'm Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games. Thank you so much for joining us today as we unveil Path of Exile's 3.13 expansion. This release contains everything you've come to expect from a Path of Exile expansion release. A new challenge league, new skills, new items, metagame rebalances, and an endgame content update which will leave a lasting impact on Path of Exile.
Hawk?
Our team have been very hard at work over the last few months, and we've got a lot up our sleeves to share with you today. But before we jump in, we wanted to mention that Twitch drops are enabled for the duration of this live stream.
Twitch drops an.
Below the stream, you'll find the instructions to link your Path of Exile account to
Ist
Twitch
gemacht.
so that you're eligible
Also
to
Twitch
receive
sind aktiv.
drops.
Twitch drops.
2020 was certainly a difficult year for development, but it was also one that saw a lot of big things happen with Path of Exile. In late 2019, we held our first ExileCon convention, where we announced several projects, including Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile Mobile. Throughout 2020, we developed 4 major expansions: Delirium, Harvest, and Heist, as well as the one we're going to unveil today. We launched on the Epic Games Store and released our Vulkan renderer and a macOS client for Path of Exile. We're really proud of what we achieved last year under difficult conditions and can't wait to continue the journey with you through 2021, where we expect to reveal much more about Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile Mobile, as well as 4 releases for Path of Exile, including the one you're about to see. Thanks again for being here with us. It wouldn't be possible without you. In today's livestream, we'll kick things off with a 3.13 announcement trailer, then take a deep dive into exploring the new expansion's content and features. Once the reveals are wrapped up, we'll launch into a live Q&A where community streamer Ziggy D will ask me questions from Twitch chat.
Ist voll
So be sure to get
groß,
your
ne?
questions ready.
Diesmal
Once
ist
the
das
Q&A
ganz
is over,
anders als
we'll be jumping
sonst.
into an episode of the Bay Class podcast, where Taki Cat and his crew of Path of Exile veterans will discuss today's reveals.
Veterans.
I'm sure you're keen for me to stop talking and start revealing the new
Let's
content.
go!
Let's jump right into the 3.13 trailer. See you on the other side.
What drives you, Exile? Is it justice? Revenge? Honor? No. It is power. We felt your deeds. Felt their shockwaves ripple through the void. You have our attention. Now you must keep it. Your limits will be tested. Break them. Do what is thought impossible, and the Atlas will follow.
What the fuck? Habt ihr gesehen, da waren 5 Bosse auf einmal. Reworked Ascendancies. Harvest. Ritual League. Neue Liga. Einheitliga oder wie? Okay, also es hat auf...
Stars themselves would bear silent witness. How far will you bend before you break?
Holy shit, dieser Geheimort. Okay, das sieht interessant aus. Hardcore Viable, sag ich nur. Hardcore Viable. Oh je.
That's one of my favorite Path of Exile trailers. We've released, what, like 35 trailers so far over the last decade, and I still get shivers watching each new one. Props to our video guy Eben for great work as usual. So there's a lot to cover based on what we've just seen. Let's get right into it.
Oh.
In 2016, we introduced the Atlas of Worlds, a formal progression system for Path of Exile's endgame maps that culminated in a pinnacle boss fight against the Shaper. Since then, the War for the Atlas and Conquest of the Atlas expansions have expanded the Atlas system, introduced new endgame bosses, broadened mechanics, added new rewards, and provided more opportunity for mastery of
Also ich mag den neuen Atlas. Viel besser.
The Echoes of the Atlas expansion introduces a new pinnacle boss, a new way to fight many map bosses at the same time, 11 new maps to explore, and new endgame rewards to earn.
Okay.
Just a few map tiers into Echoes of the Atlas, you will begin to encounter an NPC called the Envoy. It seems that when the Elder was sealed, its absence didn't go unnoticed. The Envoy speaks ominously of new visitors to the Atlas. The first such visitor, and the focus of this endgame expansion, is an entity called the Maven.
Maven.
You'll first encounter the Maven in the boss arena of a map, where she will make the boss encounter more difficult and watch as you do your best to defeat it. If you're successful, she'll give you her beacon, which lets you call her to any map in that region, so she can watch more fights. After showing her your boss-killing prowess, she will give you an invitation to her own realm, where she has prepared a special challenge. The Maven really wants to push you to your limits and has fabricated copies of the bosses she watched you defeat. This time, however, you'll have to defeat them simultaneously. If you manage to best her challenge, she'll politely ask you to do the whole cycle again, except this time she wants to watch more and tougher fights, and her next challenge will contain 4 bosses, then 5, then 6, and finally 10.
10 Bosses. 10 Stück. Frage ist, haben sie die Mods?
Talented, you may even get to fight the Maven herself, in a very difficult boss encounter designed to challenge the strongest and best Path of Exile players. Completing the Maven's challenges offers the opportunity to acquire some very powerful new rewards, including Atlas passive skill points, craftable watchstones, and even the Maven's Orb.
Okay, Atlas. Okay.
As you complete the Maven's challenges, you'll earn a new type of passive skill point that can be allocated on a special passive skill tree in that region of the Atlas of Worlds. Each of the Atlas's regions has its own passive tree, and they generally have around 20 nodes to choose from. You can earn up to a total of 10 skill points per Atlas region.
Great.
Let's check out some of the Atlas passive choices in the Glennick Cairns region. This branch allows you to focus on Beyond, increasing the amount of experience granted by Beyond monsters, but also allowing you to spawn more Beyond monsters really easily. The Torn Veil notable will drastically increase the quantity of Beyond demons you can encounter. The Legion branch has a notable passive which increases the amount of time you have to break enemies out and makes it easier to break them out. It's an example of a skill that you could invest into while you're weak, and then remove it later once you're more powerful. And yes, as I implied here, there is an orb that lets you refund Atlas passives. The Incursion branch allows you to more easily get higher tier rooms in the Temple of Atsuatl, and helps you make a definitive decision on whether to swap specific rooms. On the Ambush branch, the tamper-proof notable passive upgrades all strongboxes to be rare and corrupted.
Nochmal so viel Tiefe.
This synergizes incredibly well with the Ambush Sana mod or prophecies like Monstrous Treasure. While it prevents you from re-rolling valuable types of strongboxes, the sheer number of corrupted 6-socket and 6-link items will certainly be tempting. Now let's have a look at the Atlas passive choices available in the Lex Proxima region. The Harvest branch can increase your chances of finding a sacred grove, increase its crafting rewards, and make it more likely that you'll encounter a Shabi. We'll explain later in the presentation about how Harvest is being integrated into the core game.
Das ist das Allerwichtigste für mich.
The Torment branch can increase item drops from possessed and touched monsters, as well as populating the area with some already possessed monsters. These synergize quite well with the Sextants that guarantee a certain amount of rewards from possessed monsters. The Delve branch can increase your Sulfite gains, grant more Master Favor, and grant more Nico Master missions. The Sulfite Infusion notable passive grants Sulfite for defeating map bosses, regardless of whether the area has Nico present. This means that you'll be constantly gaining Sulfite for every map you do in a region, which is a great strategy if you're not already using Sulfite Scarabs aggressively.
Holy shit.
There are also breach passives, which increase your chances of encountering a breach and ramp up the difficulty and rewards of your breaches. Naturally, new endgame content means new endgame rewards. Watchstones are an endgame item that can be placed in the Atlas of Worlds to upgrade a region's map tiers and add new base maps to that region. There are two types of existing Watchstones: quest item ones that can upgrade a region and can't be traded between players, and unique Ivory Watchstones that provide special bonuses and can be traded. These unique ones are consumed after a number of maps are run. The Echoes of the Atlas expansion introduces 3 new types of craftable Watchstones: Titanium, Chromium, and Platinum. Like regular Watchstones, these never expire, but unlike regular Watchstones, they can be traded and crafted. They are found quite late in your progression through the Atlas. The eventual goal is that you replace all of your base quest item Watchstones with the new craftable ones over time as you upgrade your Atlas. Each of these 3 types of new Watchstone has its own special mod pool, but there's also a shared mod pool that they all draw from. Like flasks, they can only be normal or magic. You can't find or craft rare Watchstones. Because you can have up to 4 Watchstones socketed in a region, up to 8 mods can affect that region, and some quite large bonuses to specific content can be stacked. When combined with the Atlas passive trees, these really allow you to optimize what content you encounter and the rewards.
Das ist so spezifisch, krass.
The Maven's Orb is an endgame crafting currency item that can only drop from the Maven herself. It allows you to craft influence modifiers when 2 or more are present on an item, by removing one modifier and upgrading another. When upgrading an influence modifier of the current highest tier, it upgrades to a new elevated tier that can have additional properties. This Foul Regalia has 2 Crusader influence modifiers on it, the percentage increased intelligence 1 and the physical damage taken as lightning damage 1. When we apply a Maven's Orb to it, it randomly removes one of these mods and upgrades the other one to become an elevated influence mod. In this case, it upgraded the increased intelligence mod to also have +1 to the level of socketed intelligence gems. The other influence mod was removed. This opens up a mod slot, of course, so it's now possible to add another mod to it. Let's YOLO exalt it for good measure. Maven's Orb crafting is only going to be performed by the upper echelons of elite players, and pushes the boundaries of the best items that are possible in Path of Exile.
Das ist ein Power Creep, den ich wahrscheinlich nie sehen werde.
Players look forward to in an endgame Path of Exile expansion is new maps to play.
11!
In Echoes of the Atlas, we have added 11 new types of maps to the Atlas of Worlds, covering a wide variety of environments. And of course, each comes with its own challenging boss fight. Let's have a look at 4 of these new tile sets.
Wahrscheinlich wieder total tödlich. Sieht auf jeden Fall richtig geil aus. Der ist tot. Oh Mann, ich habe immer so Schiss bei Hardcore, wenn ich sowas sehe.
One of the reasons why these new maps look so good is that the environment art tile set and level design teams working on them have been doing so much work on Path of Exile 2 recently. And it's not just the 4 maps that we showed you here, there are 7 other new maps with their own bosses to discover in-game in this expansion.
Sieht halt so geil aus, ne?
Whenever we release a new quarterly Path of Exile update, we start a new challenge league.
Das ist die Liga.
A fresh server to play on for that expansion launch, where players explore the new league mechanics, rush to conquer the new economy, race to level 100, and try to get the best items before their friends. The challenge league being released alongside Echoes of the Atlas is the Ritual League. In the Ritual League, you'll discover several mysterious altars in each area you explore. Slay the monsters at the ritual site and then activate the altar to initiate the ritual. When it begins, you'll be enclosed within the ritual circle and will have to face off against both the onslaught of monsters you've just slain and also the specific powers of that altar. Each subsequent ritual in the area will summon all the monsters from the previous ones, so the difficulty and reward ramp up as you challenge yourself with each successive ritual. Monsters you kill after you have activated a ritual grant you points called tribute. At the end of each ritual, you'll have an opportunity to spend this tribute on various reward items. These items vary greatly in power and cost, so you may find you can afford several cheaper ones or one more valuable one.
Interessant.
For clarity, tribute doesn't transfer between game areas.
Sowas wie Perandus, aber viel besser.
As you complete subsequent rituals in the same area, more potential rewards will be revealed, which can be very expensive. If you can't afford to purchase a reward outright, you can spend a portion of its cost to defer it until later. This means that it will show up in a later area at a reduced price. Items can be deferred multiple times until you can eventually afford them, and for some of the most valuable rewards in this league, this may be the easiest way to obtain them.
Krass! What the fuck?
You can also spend some tribute to re-roll the contents of the reward screen one time per instance if you'd like a new set of reward items to choose from.
Oh mein Gott, ist das geil.
Among the many other rewards you can choose from in Ritual are a special new set of Ritual base types.
Sieht so OP
These are
aus.
craftable items that have different implicit modifiers than Path of Exile's regular base
Vor allem
types.
so gut.
Specifically, they have a strong upside combined with an accompanying downside.
Keine scheiß Türen,
If
Leute.
you can
Einfach nur
create a
Monster
build that
töten.
mitigates this drawback, then you can take advantage of the power of these items and craft them into something amazing. For example, these Nexus gloves reduce your maximum mana, but have a chance of immediately refunding the mana spent to use a skill. If you can work around this restriction to your mana pool, you can periodically use skills for essentially no mana cost. Here are two other examples of Ritual base types, the Penitent Mask and the
Increased effect
Stormrider
of
Boots.
Fortify.
The Penitent Mask applies the Crush debuff to you, removing your physical damage protection. However, its upside
okay.
is that it increases the effect of Fortify on you by quite a lot, reducing the damage you take from hits. There are many situations where this is a huge win, such as if you already have no armor or endurance charges. The Stormrider Boots reduce your accuracy rating but provide a huge added lightning damage boost to your attacks based on your accuracy rating. If you have other sources of accuracy to rely
Halt
on,
für
then
ein
this is
Evasion
potentially
Build
a
OP.
huge increase to the lightning damage you deal. In the endgame, you can obtain ritual vessels, which allow you to itemize the monsters from a ritual. You can place up to 4 vessels in the map device alongside a map to add the monsters stored in those vessels to the rituals present in the map. This increases both the difficulty and rewards of the rituals, as well as generating even more tribute to spend on those rewards. For example, because there's a chance of encountering a Headhunter or Mirror of Calandra as rewards, using ritual vessels increases the chances you'll be offered those items and allows you to afford them. In addition, you can use these vessels to substantially increase monster density in maxed out maps that have mechanics like Beyond or Delirium present. Using vessels, you have control over the risk and reward of your hardest ritual encounters.
Also wir sind dann
Vessels
selbst
are
schuld,
playable
wenn wir
both
sterben.
before and after they contain monsters.
Ist halt Metamorph, quasi weitergedacht.
In addition to the new endgame content in the Ritual Challenge League, a large focus of the Echoes of the Atlas expansion is on its Ascendancy
Alter,
Classes.
so viel neues Zeug,
Path
Leute.
of Exile has 19 Ascendancy Classes, which let you specialize your character further than the base character classes allow. To unlock your Ascendancy class, you must find the Altar of Ascendancy at the end of the Lord's Labyrinth. In this expansion, we've rebalanced every one of these 19 classes and have significantly reworked 3 of them, the Elementalists, the Inquisitor, and the Deadeye.
Okay.
The aim of these changes is to redistribute and simplify power so that Ascendancy passive skills perform stronger single functions more effectively. Let's check some of them out. The Elementalist has always been a good general Ascendancy class for many elemental builds, but lacked really in-depth build options. Now you can pick which elemental ailments to use for greater build customization, as well as providing more consistent power against tougher enemies. The Elementalists can also protect themselves from a large amount of elemental damage.
Klingt schon mal OP.
Bastion of Elements provides a significant defensive shield against elemental damage, which can be further improved by allocating more skills on your passive tree and Ascendancy tree. The Liege of the Primordial and Elemental skills focus on golem builds. Taking Liege of the Primordial now means that your golems are automatically resummoned 4 seconds after they die. To make your golems immune to elemental damage, you'll now need to spec into Elementor as well as Liege of the Primordial. Previously, the Shaper of Desolation skill forced you to improve both shocking and chilling, even if you didn't use both. We've now moved these benefits into their own branches, culminating in the Shaper of Flames, Winter, and Storm skills, allowing you to pick which elements you improve. You can use and enhance Ignite, Chill, and Shock on any build.
Das sieht so
Mastermind of
OP
Discord
aus.
no longer focuses on heralds and allows you to strip all elemental resistances from your enemies effectively. Pendulum of Destruction has been reworked as Heart of Destruction, providing more elemental
Vor allem
damage
fürs
or
Early
area
Game,
of
Leute.
effect when you need them most.
Wenn ihr dachtet, jetzt war das schon die beste Racing-Klasse.
The Inquisitor has derived much of its power from its Inevitable Judgment skill, but the rest of the tree was fairly straightforward and lacked anything truly unique. After our changes in this expansion, many more of the Inquisitor skills provide significantly more offensive or defensive power, while Instruments of Zeal opens up an entirely new and very unique playstyle. Let's have a look at some of the new Inquisitor Ascendancy skills. Pious Path no longer affects attack and cast speed. It now allows you to double the potential recovery of life regeneration by having it apply equally to Energy Shield. Sanctuary no longer provides mana, but now has a larger damage bonus from Consecrated Ground, up from 10% to 15%. Righteous Providence has been simplified a lot. It still focuses on critical strike chance, but it now scales it up by a percentage equivalent to either your strength or intelligence value, whichever one is lowest. It also provides plus 50 to both of these attributes, which is a huge benefit in multiple ways. You will definitely want lots of both attributes. Instruments of Virtue has been simplified and made more powerful. Its benefits no longer strictly apply if you've cast a spell or attacked recently, but it now grants 10% more attack damage for each non-instant spell you've cast recently, up to a maximum of 30%. It also grants Battle Mage, which causes you to gain added spell damage equal to the damage of your main hand weapon. This provides a lot of new hybrid spellcaster melee build
Das ist so
possibilities.
krass gut. Ist halt more damage, ne?
You can combine Instruments of Virtue with the new Instruments of Zeal Ascendancy passive. This introduces the concept of fanaticism, which causes spells you cast yourself to have 75% more cast speed, reduced mana cost, and increased area of effect. Fanaticism is gained by using attacks regularly, giving huge bonuses for weaving attacking and spellcasting together. Historically, the Deadeye Ascendancy was the best place to find a variety of strong projectile-based effects, but over time more of these effects have shown up on items, and the Deadeye has lost much of what made it unique. We've brought the uniqueness back to this Ascendancy with a variety of new mechanics that enable new ways to build and play ranges. Let's have a look at the new Deadeye Ascendancy skills. Far Shot now deals 60% more damage to enemies far away from you, which is up from 30% before,
LOL.
but now also deals 20% less damage to enemies that are close.
Okay.
It no longer has a projectile speed bonus, but now removes the spread from your barrages. This additional damage rewards Deadeyes who can keep their distance from their targets. Previously, Ricochet caused your projectiles to chain an additional time
Trotzdem
and granted
60%.
10% more damage for each remaining chain. The new Ricochet allows your projectiles to both chain an additional time and have a chance to chain off walls and terrain. Endless Munitions has been simplified to offer 2 additional projectiles rather than 1 additional projectile and some other minor bonuses. This skill is accessible behind 3 of the Deadeye's paths, making it an option for many different Deadeye builds. Occupying Force is a new skill that benefits Mirage Archers by granting you additional ones and allowing them to be separate from you.
Minion build.
Gathering Winds
It's
now
Ranger.
always grants Tailwind to permanently boost your speed, and the increase to Tailwind effect per skill used is now given by the Gale Force buff. Wind Ward enhances the Gathering Winds passive by making Gale Force a lot more effective, with the drawback of losing all Gale Force if you're hit. If you can stay out of the fray, this potentially makes your character even more potent. The Rupture skill previously helped Critical Strike bleed builds. It's been renamed to Rupture Ring and has been simplified while being made more powerful. Critical strikes that inflict bleeding now also inflict Rupture, which causes bleeding enemies to lose more life, but their bleed expires more quickly. Focal Point is a new skill which improves the effect of mark skills that were made more powerful in our recent Heist expansion. It increases the effect of your marks by 75% and makes surrounding enemies deal less damage to you. As you have seen, the Elementalists
25? Habe ich die Zeit gerade richtig gesehen? 25% less?
We have also improved the other 16 Ascendancy classes and will show you some of the changes to the Slayer to demonstrate what you can expect. Some Slayer effects were much stronger than others, limiting build choice. We've now provided more power spread out over a wider selection of passives, while allowing easier access to the Slayer's special leech mechanic. Brutal Fervor and Endless Hunger have switched places on their Ascendancy branch so that Life Leech is more accessible and can be further improved by speccing into Endless Hunger. Masterful Form still causes you to have endurance charges equal to the number of frenzy charges you have, but now grants an additional frenzy charge instead of increasing endurance and frenzy charge duration. Overwhelm's base critical strike chance for attacks with weapons has been increased.
Schon guter Buff.
Hopefully you now have a good idea of the scope of changes that we've made to the 19 Ascendancy Classes. While the biggest changes to the 3 we're heavily revamping, the Elementalist, Inquisitor, and Deadeye, all of the others have received at least numeric attention also. We believe that the new design philosophy for Ascendancy passives makes them easier to understand and that they are a more concentrated source of power.
Das müssen wir alles
We
uns
look forward to
durchlesen.
revealing
Holy
the rest
shit.
of the changes next week.
Ja.
Like with improving Ascendancy classes, adding new skill and support gems to Path of Exile helps create new ways to play. In Echoes of the Atlas, we've introduced 2 new gems that provide versatile ways for you to build powerful new characters. These are the Hydrosphere Skill Gem and the Trinity Support Gem. First, let's have a look at Hydrosphere. The skill summons a huge sphere of water that you can move around to crush enemies. While it is active, you can apply cold or lightning ailments to it. It will then pulse for a duration, afflicting nearby enemies with damage matching that ailment. This player is applying freeze to the Hydrosphere with freezing pulse, and that causes it to repeatedly damage surrounding enemies with cold damage.
Okay. Komischer Skill.
Here's the gem hover for Hydrosphere. This skill gem can be acquired from level 34 and can be supported with spell, area of effect, duration, cold, orb, lightning, and physical support gems. It pulses every 0.4 seconds while an ailment is applied to it. It also converts its physical damage to cold or lightning damage based on what ailments are on it.
Okay.
The Trinity Support Gem is designed to support builds that deal multiple types of elemental damage. While Trinity supports your skill, any hits that deal damage with a specific element will build resonance with the other 2 elements. The more resonance you have of every element, the more damage the Trinity Support Gem provides. When you have high resonance with all 3 elements, Trinity also grants elemental penetration. Here you can see the player using Ball Lightning with Unleash and Magma Orb to build resonance across all 3 elements. To power up the Trinity Support Gem quickly and uniformly, the player alternates between pairs of elemental damage types. Combined with the Elemental Weakness Curse, the Maximum Resonance Trinity absolutely decimates enemies.
Okay, also man spielt 2 Sachen
In addition to
gleichzeitig.
introducing the 2 entirely new gems we described, we've done an extensive balance pass on other skills. We have buffed over 40 existing
Righteous
gems,
Fire wurde
including
gebufft.
skills such as Scorching Ray, Seismic
nee,
Trap,
Scorching Ray.
Firestorm, Venom Gyre, Static Strike, Kinetic Bolt, Crackling Lance, Lightning Strike, Shrapnel Ballista, and Artillery Ballista. Full details will be available in the patch notes next week, so that you can plan your perfect
Haben
build.
die nicht gesagt, es wird kleine Patch Notes sein? Geil.
As well as introducing and rebalancing skills, another important aspect of keeping the metagame fresh in a Path of Exile expansion is adding new unique items to discover and build characters around. Unlike most items you find in Path of Exile that are randomly generated, unique items are extremely rare ones that our design team have hand-created to offer new build opportunities. Echoes of the Atlas introduces 10 new unique items, some of which are exclusive to its new endgame encounters. Let's have a look at a few. These are some unique worm-scale boots called Legacy of Fury. They place scorched ground as you travel, which applies the Scorch ailment to enemies standing in it. When scorched enemies die, they have a chance to set fire to surrounding enemies, dealing a percentage of the slain enemy's life over time. These boots create an interesting and new way to support your build with fire damage. This is a new unique amethyst ring called Black Flame, which is themed around fire and chaos damage. Its headline effect is that your ignites now deal chaos damage, along with a cool new chaos ignited effect on monsters. Also, if you ignite a withered enemy while wearing Black Flame, the wither will no longer expire, and you can build up to its maximum of 15 stacks, if the enemy survives long enough, that is. Along with its various other benefits, this unique ring should ignite a few new ways of playing fire and chaos damage characters. These new Zealot gloves are called Hand of the Fervent and create an interesting interaction between physical damage and the mana cost of skills. The unique ability of these gloves happens whenever you use a skill. They grant an effect called Sacrificial Zeal, which both adds a quarter of the skill's mana cost to spell physical damage, but also hurts you, to the tune of 150% of the skill's mana cost over 4 seconds. They also reduce your enemy's physical damage reduction. When we have time during an expansion's development, we try to identify past leagues that can be integrated into the core game as optional side content, with a few improvements. This expansion contains 2 such leagues. Last year, we released the Harvest League, which allowed you to grow a garden of monsters, fight them, and then use their lifeblood to craft your items in powerful ways. Watching this league unfold made us realize 2 things. Firstly, The crafting options were so powerful and so easily accessible that players had unprecedented access to almost everything they wanted very quickly. Secondly, even the players who did enjoy the mechanics of growing their own garden would probably find it boring if that was something they had to do every single league. When deciding how to integrate Harvest into the core game, we knew that we had to curtail crafting somehow, but we didn't want to just do this by nerfing it a lot. We needed a smarter solution that still allowed players to earn and perform powerful crafts. We also knew that we didn't want players to have to manage their own gardens every league. So let's check out how Harvest works as part of the core game in Echoes of the Atlas. In Echoes of the Atlas, as you play through maps, rather than finding a seed cache, you'll now encounter a portal to the Sacred Grove. But it's not your own Sacred Grove, it's an established one that has a full complement of plants ready to harvest, fight, and craft with. The grove contains several pairs of harvests to choose between, each displaying the details of the fight and the corresponding crafting options. You can only pick one of each pair, so carefully choose which crafting options are best for you, defeat the monsters, and use their life force to perform the crafts.
Fuck, ich hab's verpasst, Leute.
If you're strong enough to kill the monsters, each grove represents quite a lot of crafting opportunities, and you can save up to 10 crafts for later use at the Hoarder crafting station, which is now available in your hideout. We like this compromise because it keeps the exciting elements of harvest, fighting and crafting, and drops the part that got old quickly, seed management and garden planning.
Nice. I like it. Aber fuck, ich hab verpasst, wie selten das ist. Wir müssen uns nochmal anschauen.
The core game is optional content with a few improvements. In Heist, players travel to the Rogue Harbor to hire a crew of thieves to help them plan and execute risky heists, working towards a thief's ultimate goal, pulling off a grand heist. In the Echoes of the Atlas expansion, heist contracts drop from Act 6 onwards. Rogues level up their skills faster from completing heists, markers drop with higher stack sizes, and quest contracts are now dropped for you at the next smuggler's cache as soon as that quest is available. One great aspect of heists is that all of its progress items are tradable, so if you're focusing on other content, you can trade away your contracts until you're ready to go on some heists. So we've covered most of the big features of Echoes of the Atlas so far. Keep an eye out for the patch notes in a few days where we will detail other changes that didn't make it into this presentation.
Mit diesem letzten Teil muss ich mir nochmal anschauen, ich habe ihn verpasst.
Q&A about today's announcements. But first, let's have a quick look at the new supporter packs that are available right now to celebrate the Echoes of the Atlas expansion and the Ritual Challenge League, and to help fund the ongoing development of Path of Exile. The Faithsworn and Renegade supporter packs come with masses of points to spend in the store, social frames, forum titles and badges, a download of the digital soundtrack, and of course exclusive cosmetic microtransactions such as armor sets and character effects. The Renegade series has an exclusive pet, and the Faithsworn series an exclusive portal effect. Each series has 2 packs, and the smaller packs can be upgraded to their respective larger packs at any time while they are still on sale. These are, of course, in addition to the new core packs that we released a couple of weeks ago. Remember to check those out if you haven't already.
Okay, der sieht geil aus. Holy shit. Okay, der letzte sah richtig gut aus.
Thanks so much for your support. As you know, purchases of these packs are what fund ongoing development of Path of Exile, its expansions, and its sequel. Speaking of Path of Exile 2, we know you're keen for an update. While today is all about Path of Exile and Echoes of the Atlas, we have plenty of Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile Mobile updates planned for you this year, which will start sooner than you think. Our team have been creating some amazing stuff and we can't wait to reveal it to you.
PoE 2 dieses Jahr noch, Leute. Also
so,
Neuigkeiten
I'm sure you have a bunch
dazu.
of burning questions about Echoes of the Atlas. Stay tuned as we're joined by Ziggy D, who will be hosting a Q&A with me based on your questions from Twitch chat.
Twitch chat questions. Clap, 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 clap. I just claimed Magma Wings. Thanks for the drops. Ja, stimmt, halbe Stunde vorbei. Jetzt solltet ihr diese Flügel haben. Im Chat wart. Ja, krass, oder? Was sagt ihr, Leute? Ich schaue jetzt wieder ein bisschen auf den Chat. Also die Expansion mit dem neuen Atlas sieht brutal gut aus. 10 Bosse gleichzeitig fighten. Das sah so aus, als ob man Kitava mit Dominus und so weiter gleichzeitig fighten kann. Das sah schon brutal aus. Und dann hatten wir... Alter, ich will das alles nochmal anschauen. Ich will diesen letzten Teil kurz nochmal finden. Warte mal, ist das Video... Ist das auf YouTube schon? Auf Exile... Pension... Ist das schon auf YouTube? Das ist der Teaser, den heute. Scheint noch nicht. Ist auf Atlas? Doch schon irgendwann der Release. Trailer? Ist der? Aber ich will den Talk eher hören. Ah ja, da ist es doch. Genau, so den letzten Teil, den schauen wir uns nochmal kurz an.
We needed a smarter optional side content where they release the harvests in powerful ways. Watching this league unfold made us realize two things. Firstly, the crafting options were so powerful and so easily accessible that players that unprecedented did enjoy the mechanics of growing their own garden would probably find it
Also
boring
erstmal, der Garten muss man nicht selbst bauen, das ist schon mal super.
if that was something they had to do every single league. When deciding how to integrate Harvest into the core game, we knew that we had to curtail crafting somehow, but we didn't want to just do this by nerfing it a lot. We needed a smarter solution that still allowed players to earn and perform powerful crafts. We also knew that we didn't want players to have to grow and manage their own gardens every league. So let's check out how Harvest works as part of the core game in Echoes of the Atlas. In Echoes of the Atlas, as you play through maps, rather than finding a seed cache, you'll now encounter a portal to the sacred
Q&A
grove.
segment for today's reveal. Thank you very much for joining us, Chris
Es gibt aber
Wilson.
anscheinend ein Portal.
Oh, you're welcome.
Egal,
Thanks very
schauen wir
much
uns
for
später
hosting.
nochmal an.
That was a lot of fun, actually.
That was I think since ExileCon, the most dense info reveal that we've had all in one go. I think people are a little bit overwhelmed. I saw a lot
Das
of
war so
people kind of
viel, ne?
exploding in
Das
chat,
war so
saying too
viel.
much, the heads exploding.
Ich kann gar nicht
It was
alles
honestly
sortieren
trying to
jetzt.
revive what we were doing at ExileCon with this announcement. You know, we had a lot of fun presenting everything ourselves to the players last year on stage, and we thought, why not try that again? Took a bunch of work to prepare the live stream, of course, but yeah, I think it went pretty well.
Yeah, I was going to ask actually, because this is quite different to how you normally go about revealing things. So I was trying to recapture that ExileCon magic a little bit, which I think everyone is kind of in need of at the moment. It's exciting to see.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good distraction away from real world stuff and a good chance to get stuck into some PoE in the new year.
Absolutely. So we're going to jump into some questions, and this is a live Q&A. So you, of course, then post your questions in chat as well.
Nicht meins.
Chris, phones off, Chris.
Yeah, well, people are just calling me on Discord because they see me on like Twitch.
They're excited. They're like, hey, I'm going to call Chris right now. Now's the perfect
You're on the
time to talk
internet, bro.
Hey, Chris, wow, do you realize you're on the internet? We're going to jump into some pre-made questions, but you, of course, can submit your questions in the chat. We have a team of mods who are pulling questions throughout that we'll answer a little bit later on. First, though, let's start off with Echoes of the Atlas, the new overall major expansion. So this is like the core game content expansion, really end game focus with this character, the Maven. So this seems like an expansion to the Cyrus and Conquerors endgame that we have right now, in a similar fashion to how the Elder was an expansion to the Shaper endgame. Is there a similar sort of intertwining of the storylines here, like there was with the Shaper and Elder?
So our goal is that they exist entirely in parallel to each other, right? Like the Maven stuff is there at the same time as all the Cyrus stuff. But story-wise, they're different. It's more of a story expansion to the Elder storyline, actually, because whatever type of entity the Elder was, the Maven is also. And so there's some stuff for players to explore there.
Ooh.
And so the Cyrus stuff still exists in parallel. We
Lore,
haven't taken
Leute.
anything away. Though we do want to
Wir kennen
foreshadow
den
that it's
PoE-Lore.
very likely that before the release of Path of Exile 2, we'll probably remove or substantially modify the Cyrus storyline as well. We're still evolving the end game in the direction we wanted to be in for the release of PoE 2, but the Maven will probably be around for some time.
I really like this otherworldly stuff that you've been kind of hinting at for years, like these other kind of universes that leak into ours in Path of Exile. So this seems like a further exploration of that, which I'm pretty excited about. But what led to the decision to kind of go that route and continue with like the Elder kind of connected storyline instead of continuing or doing something else with Cyrus's? Or was that just self-contained and felt complete?
The writers have a lot of plan for what they want to do in the future, and it is leading up to, I mean, we haven't talked a lot about the story of Path of Exile 2 and what's going on there, but we do have an overarching plan along our franchise, and so it's important for us to drop hints and set things up correctly with Path of Exile 1 in the meantime.
Okay.
I still remember years and years ago when you said you had like a plan for 10 acts and a decade worth of content and things like that. Well, still going along with that like long arcing plan then.
Stretches out another 10 years now, yep.
Good stuff. That's good to hear. It's good to hear. So how does the Maven's, this is something I wasn't clear on from the thing, how does the Maven's kind of gameplay loop or cycle work in terms of content, how you engage with it? Does the Maven progression occur alongside the Cyrus and Watchstone progression?
Yeah, it's entirely alongside. Like,
Also
it's
es ist ein
entirely possible to
Nebencampaign
complete all the
quasi,
Maven
eine
stuff without
Nebenstory.
yet fighting Cyrus and vice versa. Basically, after you've encountered the Maven for the first time, you can call her to witness map boss kills of yours. And so basically, when you're using the map device in an area, you click the little Maven icon to use her beacon, and then she will be present in the
Sie
map
ist
for
quasi
the
so ein
fight.
Beobachter.
And her presence makes it more difficult, and it means that you've basically captured a copy of that map boss, and it puts an icon next to that map on the atlas. And then from time to time, you get an invitation to her realm, where there's an escalating number of bosses you have to fight simultaneously, 3, 4,
Mich
5,
interessiert, ob die
6.
Mods
And
haben.
the 10 one can be farmed. That's the one there that is a item that you can craft mods onto. And so
Okay.
that's the fight that you basically get to repeat with really good rewards if you're able to kill 10 bosses at once. And so there's kind of two parallel things you're doing there. You're earning the invitations to the realm, and you're also locking bosses in that she's got copies of. And this is on a per region basis. And that progression there is what dictates your passive points that you unlock on those region trees. And so there's 5 sets of 2 points that you receive for completing the 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10 boss fights, respectively. And then, of course, after completing the 10 fight, you have the opportunity to occasionally potentially challenge the Maven herself.
Okay, I'm guessing that'll be kind of secrets to be revealed from
Yeah, I'm
launch,
sure
the actual
people
Maven
will
mods.
work it out. And this is
Yeah.
all in parallel to the existing Watchstone progression, though, of course, it's super, super endgame stuff.
Yeah, okay. And you said this in the initial reveal, it said that this kicks in around like a few tiers into the Atlas. You start capturing the bosses.
That's
and
right.
we don't need nets for that, right?
We took nets out early in development.
Okay, good stuff. So I'm pretty excited about this idea of fighting 10 map bosses at a time. I love boss fights in general. But something interesting we learned from Metamorph and the lab fights version of the Metamorph bosses was that it's often the map mods that actually make bosses difficult, and fighting them outside of that,
Gute
it's
Frage.
often a lot easier in comparison. So how will the boss fights here, these Maven boss fights, be scaled in difficulty in the actual Maven's arena?
So as you're playing through them, initially doing 3, then 4, then 5, and so on, those ones there are difficult because there's multiple bosses at the same time. But by the time you need mods in order to make them harder, that's when mods start to kick in on the invitation items that you get for the farmable 10 boss fight. So that one's craftable. And so you definitely want to pump the rewards on that one as much as you can, because that's the place where you're finding a lot of the good in-game rewards from. You're finding,
Okay, also man muss nicht mit OP-Mods die Dinger machen.
and so on.
Das sind also Bosse ohne Mods.
Okay, I have a few questions from that. Unexpected ones. You mentioned invitation items, so there's an itemized system here?
So the first invitations that you receive from the Maven to go to her realm and fight some locked-in bosses, they're quest items, basically, because there's a strict progression of 3, 4, 5, and so on. The 10 invitation, where you get to, that's the farmable one, that one there is a tradable item. And so you're bottlenecked by both having 10 bosses in the can, as it were, and also having the item with the mods that you want. And so because they're tradable, of course, it may be that you want to go and craft or trade for some that are incredibly good, or maybe you find one that's great, but it's too difficult for you, so you just trade it and get chaos to spend on something else.
So they have the bosses on them, on the item, and also mods, it sounds like?
So to be clear about that, you're locking in bosses on your atlas at any time, and the item is entirely separate. And so you'll, of course, have the item by the time you have the bosses, because they drop at a similar rate, but it's entirely possible that you do have surplus items that you want to trade to other people. And it may be that you're going for just harder bosses, like you want to lock in 10 incredibly difficult and rewarding ones rather than 10 of the easier ones. And so, the two progressions are in parallel with each other.
Yep. Okay. And does the bosses you choose have an impact beyond just difficulty?
I don't actually know the answer to that. Does anyone who's watching over here want to clarify? Yeah, it's just the difficulty.
Okay.
And of course, people
Es wird
will
also
have strategic
schwerer.
reasons to
Also
fight
jeder,
certain ones.
es kommt auf den Boss an. Du kannst einfach 10 einfache Bosse
Last time I
finden
was
oder 10
playing,
schwere Bosse.
high-tier maps, there are bosses I do not want to be fighting.
Also man möchte 10 einfache Bosse haben.
Can you put like multiple of the same boss in, like 10 Katavas or something?
Or
they have to be different?
I mean,
Okay.
the engine supports it. Don't get me wrong. This is a potential for the future, but you're fighting unique ones, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Yeah.
Okay, 10 verschiedene Bosse.
It's actually the first thing I thought when I saw it was it reminded me of those videos you put out of like bosses fighting each other. Is it kind of inspired by that or something?
Well, it's interesting because when we initially designed all the map boss fights, we made them work in their respective arenas, right? There's various triggers and distances and all that kind of stuff. And we have put so much work into making it so that bosses can work anywhere, so that you could just drop a Katava on the coast, essentially. For this and other things, the ability to have map bosses just occur in any place gives us a lot of extra content in the game. And so that's being tried out in the Maven's arena here.
Das
And
ist echt
it's
neu,
funny,
ne? Dass
honestly, so
Gitarre
much of
einfach
the work
überall
on the
auftauchen
expansion
kann
was
jetzt.
genericizing the map boss fights without making the fights any less awesome.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, I imagine it was difficult to get things like Katava and stuff that were very locked in place, working in different arenas. I'm afraid that we're going to see things like Katava starts dragging himself around by the arms or something like that, terrifying like that.
Well, wait and see.
Okay. So, in terms of the Atlas here, it seems like a pretty substantial step up in complexity with craftable watchstones and the Atlas passive
Das
trees,
ist
which
so
look pretty
unique,
insane
ne?
alongside the current
Du kannst
watchtower
deinen eigenen
progression
Atlas
system,
komplett so
which
einstellen
a
für
lot of
die
people
Taktik, die
feel
du
in the
willst.
already. It's a pretty
Zum
complex
Beispiel, du
system
willst
for a lot of
Delphen, dann
people, it
machst du einen
seems. How do you think the
Delph-Atlas.
average or newer players are going to handle? How do they handle the current Atlas? Firstly, and how do you
Neue
think they'll handle
Spieler
this?
sind im Arsch.
It's pretty endgame, and that means you have a pretty good understanding by the time you get to it. It's also introduced at a rate that's relatively manageable. You get it in pieces, and it's kind of optional as well. Like putting watchstones in, sure, it's complicated if you want to roll the best ones, but you're unlocking these over quite a period of time. Like they are valuable, they are end-game rewards. You do need to get them one at a time, and you have control over what the mods are. And so it doesn't really matter if you make mistakes there, because it's just going to mean you get worse rewards for your content. And so we don't think it's going to hamper anyone's enjoyment of the game if they're not maximizing the system. But of course, as they learn more about it, they will certainly benefit. And as you know, with a free-to-play game, many players who play it don't quite get through to red tier maps, and we're okay with that, but those who do will certainly have a lot of stuff here that they can play.
Right, I gotcha. Yeah, unlike regular watchstones, it doesn't stop you from progressing so much as just give you extra reward engaging with the system well. So it seems like there's actually quite a lot of extra reward here. The passive trees in collaboration with these new craftable watchstones, from what I saw of those passive trees, there's a lot of stuff like guaranteeing generals and legions and stuff like that that are juicing up the rewards quite a bit. How how much more rewarding do you feel the Atlas is going to be? And I guess you guys are comfortable with how much extra we're going to be getting?
Well, part of it is that for a while, players have complained. A word they often use disparagingly is clutter, that the end game has a lot of alternate systems that you can choose between. And while we philosophically believe that it's great for there to be a choice of content for people to play, and they should play whatever content they enjoy the most and are best at, we want to allow them to double down on content. We want them to be able to say, I like this, I want to see it more often, and I want to see it be more rewarding. And that way, you customize what you want to be playing, and then you play that, and you get good rewards for it. And that enables you to trade those rewards to people who did other stuff. So, for example, if you just hate incursion, you never want to touch a temple in your life, but you want double corrupted items, you just do heist or harvest or whatever it is that you enjoy a lot, and trade those items for the double corrupted ones. And so both the watchstones and the Atlas
Ja,
passives
aber
here
was ist, wenn ich
allow you to
Solo-Self-Spieler bin?
influence content that you're encountering, make it more rewarding, and basically specialize, while still making sure that there's a broad
Ach
base
man,
of
ich
Path of
hasse
Exile
es, dass
content for
PoE
you to
auf Trades
experience if you do
gebalanced
want to try
ist.
something new.
I have always really liked the idea of us being
Aber ja,
able
selbst
to
einstellen. Also,
really
ich
specialize
meine, am
in
Ende
certain
wird das
pieces of
eine Taktik
content.
geben, die
And we're
wahrscheinlich
seeing,
zumindest
I
in
think, a
Solo-Self-Font
progression
das
towards
Beste
more and
sein
more
wird.
of that, which is pretty interesting to
Aber
see.
es wird
It
super
almost
geil
seems
sein
like a
zum
step towards
Experimentieren jetzt die erste
giving us
Liga, wo keiner einen
the
Plan
ability to
hat, was das
choose which
Beste.
of these things, like you mentioned, people saying that there's a bit too much clutter. There's like the
Also
option
ich finde es
to
super.
effectively
Ich finde es
choose
mega
now
gut. Das ist
which
genau der
ones you
richtige
actually care
Schritt, den
about.
wir schon immer wollten.
We've certainly discussed ideas of reducing the base rate and having this stuff amp it up. And, you know, that's a change we might even see before release, potentially, depending on how balancing goes. But we do want content to be available that you encounter occasionally, even if you've chosen to specialize in other things. It's nice to occasionally run into it, to have an
Da ist ein
opportunity to
krasser
try it.
Power Creep.
That's the only way a player's
Ich
going to
glaube
work out
aber,
that they
dass die
actually
Gegner
can do
jetzt
that
sehr viel
content and that
stärker
they do
sind.
like it. And so, you know, there's plenty of time in the future to tweak this in future
Wir haben einen neuen
expansions, but
Endboss.
it's likely that
Der
we
muss
are not
wahrscheinlich
just going
stärker
to turn
sein.
content outright off and hide it away.
It's almost like they're little demos to tempt you into maybe trying to specialize in those and see how you go. It's like, oh, I keep seeing these Legion things. I wonder what it'd be like if I specialize in those.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay. How hard is it to respect these Atlas passive trees? Are they something we're adjusting really often or leaving intact most of the time?
So there is a currency that lets you refund it, and that currency, of course, has a value. I mean, how long is a piece of string, right? Like, you're not going to be able to do this super easily, but wealthy endgame players can absolutely, you know, respec as much as they need to. It's just going to cost them, and there's going to be an opportunity cost to that. Now, there are strategies, of course, where you may want to respec these aggressively. You might work out that the best way of getting currency is to actively manage what Atlas passives you've chosen. And to do so, of course, that's going to burn a bunch of currency achieving that, and players will work out the right amount to do that's still profitable for themselves.
Yeah, I imagine this is like something when people are doing the like fully juiced content where they're stacking sextants and everything else to get specific content. That might be something they adjust to synergize with those things once they like get the
Ja,
stars to align.
solche
for
Exactly.
Trade-Liga-Boys werden das so
Because this,
abusen
like
können.
most things in Path of Exile, is a market-driven thing. It means that if there's little need to respec, then the respec orbs will inevitably be very cheap, and that means you can respec easily and there's no problem. And if it's just insanely profitable to respec dynamically, then people will do that and it will make it expensive, and we'll just have to have a look at the effects of this and rebalance it later on if needed.
Okay, so the reveal
wieder
kind of
Trade.
slipped something in there that people might have missed. You mentioned that the Maven is the first. So is this planned as an expandable system with more people like the Maven, more
So you're
creatures like the
referring to
Maven?
the Eldritch entities that have noticed that the Elder is missing.
Hmm.
Maybe we'll see more in future expansions. Who knows? I mean,
Ach was,
you know,
Elder
we've
wurde
got
entfernt oder
many
was?
decades of lifespan left to
Oder
spend
wie
on
ist
this
das jetzt
project,
gemeint?
so we
Nee,
have to come
oder?
up with some more entities at some point.
I'm a sucker for things like that where you're like
Nee, storytechnisch
hinting
ist
at
er
the
weg,
fact
ne?
that
Aber der ist
there's
schon
like
noch
an
da.
expanded kind of lore universe here that's going to draw from. I thought I'd ask. I figured it would be a maybe answer though.
Yeah.
Let's move on to ritual. So the ritual sites, it says that we pull monsters to them or that we kill monsters in the area. Are we intended to pull monsters to these ritual sites, and do we pull bosses to them?
Right, so you definitely don't need to and should not pull a monster to the site. And we did this on purpose, because if it counts the monsters that are nearby, and if there was a benefit for pulling monsters there, then the correct behavior is to grab half the map and drag it to a ritual, and that's not fun. So the way it works is when a ritual spawns, it's near some monsters organically because it's biased towards monsters, and it has a bunch of extra monsters on it. And so those monsters that are near it, you do have to clear before you start the ritual, but there's no need to pull extra monsters in. It literally does nothing. So you clear the ritual by killing all the monsters nearby, and it'll be a decent fight. And then you tag the ritual altar, and that resummons all the monsters in a staggered formation as you're fighting against the effects of the altar. And we didn't make it super clear in the video, but there are lots of different types of altars with lots of like arena-based combat that you get to do there. It's not really like an Orion mission where it's slow-paced. This is something that's really throwing monsters in your face. It's meant to be a fast-paced, bite-sized combat encounter. And then each of the subsequent ones that you do has all those monsters and more. And so because they ramp
Also
up
allgemein für SSF ist das richtig geil, ja. Dass du Content spezifisch machen kannst. Ich kann jetzt eigentlich Legion effektiv farmen vielleicht. Vielleicht bekommt man das erste Legion-Juwel vor Level 90 jetzt, weil man gezielt darauf seinen Atlas bauen kann.
But you never know, it might get pretty hard for you.
And just trying to flatter the crowd. You're also
it is true that the top 10% of players are the ones that are watching right now. You know, they're making an effort to talk about the game.
Fair. So there's a bunch of items in this store once you like finish the ritual.
Schaut Rippy aus? Ja, extrem Rippy sieht das alles
do the
aus.
rares in there use the new high quality rare generation system that we saw a taster of in Heist?
Some of them do. There are basically different categories of things that can appear in the favor rewards. Favors are what we're calling the items you buy with tribute. And so some of them are templates that generate high quality rares where it biases the mods, and some of them are not. It really depends what we're trying to achieve with that particular slot. And we've tried to have a lot of variety in there. So yeah, occasionally you'll find exceptionally good stuff, and occasionally you'll find stuff that's there for another reason, potentially because it's got like let's say it's got influence on it. It probably doesn't need to have insanely.
Ich bin jetzt gespannt, ob Scissorin jetzt wirklich Maeve den ersten Dingsbums-Skill Race macht.
Okay,
Schon,
so
oder?
Kind of notice like themes for the items that they're like built around then.
Absolutely.
Also Race zum ersten Endboss.
When you complete a ritual, there's this ritual
Gott, wird das geil.
and
Schade, dass ich wahrscheinlich keine Zeit habe dafür, aber ja.
And there's multiple rituals per map. Do the later rituals in the same map add more items to that same stock, or are they a new
Bisher
stock
haben wir
of
auch
items
nichts
each
gehört
time?
von Scissorin, ja.
So the way it works is
Aber
the items
wahrscheinlich,
are in the first
oder?
window, and some of them are hidden. So those ones, if you check back at the footage, have like a little icon over them. It's shrouded. It was initially the present wrapping thing that we use occasionally and stuff, but that looked real weird for it to be a bunch of birthday presents basically in the window. So the unrevealed items are there.
11 Maps
And
sehen
the
echt
reason
geil
why
aus, ne?
is so that you don't just cycle doing the first ritual in each area repeatedly until you find one with good
Also
rewards.
sehr
The
schöne
incentive is you
Bossfights
actually
auch.
play through the rituals to get to the more
Also
advanced
komplett
items.
unique
And the ones
wieder
that are
mal.
hidden from you are the more
Die meisten
expensive
waren ja
ones,
aus der
the ones
Story,
that
das
cost
sind
more
jetzt komplett
tribute.
unique Bosse.
Now, obviously the best strategy is probably to do all the rituals first before deciding what to buy. That's fully intentional, right? It's not gaming the system to save your money until you can make a fully informed choice.
Ich meine, wie
But the
viele neue
reason that we
Bosse haben
showed
wir
it early
bekommen?
is because there's no reason not to
20
allow people to
Stück
go
oder
shopping
so,
with their
ne?
tribute if they do see something they like. Like if you're looking for a Chaos Orb and you can afford a Chaos Orb after a couple
20
of
neue
rituals,
Bosse.
just buy it if you want it. I mean, you could wait a little bit longer if you know,
Also,
it doesn't
viele
hurt to wait
davon
longer, but
Minibosse, aber
you can
trotzdem.
make purchases early on if you choose to.
Making it so that we don't like cycle the first thing in a map and jump straight into a new map, and making it so that we can like defer items for purchase later. I feel like you're learning from our behavior.
Ja, also das mit dem Loot ist so gut gelöst jetzt. Also der Loot ist, ich liebe es.
Does any
Von
of
der
the,
neuen
like,
League-Mechanik hier
unique
mit
ritual
diesem
loot or any of the, like,
Opferungsteil.
ritual-ish loot, such as new bases or uniques,
Das
do you
ist
drop
so
from monsters
gut.
during the rituals as well, or are
Es
all
ist
the new
genau das,
things
wie
purchasable
man
from the
es
favor store?
Rewards machen
They're
sollte.
all purchasable from the favor store. So the new rewards do not drop from the actual monsters while you're fighting. And we
Eigentlich
did that
keine
because we
1000
wanted the
Loot,
player
die
to
man
have to
nicht
make
braucht,
a
droppen, sondern es
informed
droppt nur
decision to
eine
take that
Sache.
item.
Die
Chance
Sache,
was
die
to
ich
be
brauche,
presented with
die
it and
bekomme
decide
ich.
it versus other
Zu
convenient things at the
100%.
same time to have a bit
Und
more
der Rest
gravitas to
interessiert mich auch nicht. Das
Okay,
ist
so
so
I'm curious
gut.
about these ritual
Das
vessels
ist halt
then.
perfekt.
So they capture monsters from a ritual site to use in later maps.
Vor allem,
Is this
keine Ahnung,
instead
ist
of doing
halt
the
geil.
ritual or like an after thing after you finish the ritual?
It's an after thing. So you do a ritual, and if you think, man, that was a lot of monsters, somehow I got like a boss in there. I kind of feel there's a lot of tribute. Let's capture it, and then you capture it after it. So you still got all the benefits of killing the monsters, all the
Genau,
tribute
es
you
ist
get, you get
Kadiro
your
plus.
reward from
Ja,
that, and
so
then you
sehe
have
ich
a
das
chance
auch.
of capturing that, so that you can use it to juice a map up later.
I imagine the ritual favor points based on the monsters you kill. So just having a boss in there give you a lot more or something?
Absolutely, yeah. You'll get an idea for what just gave you a lot of favor, and that's when you stick it in a bottle and use that to juice up a map later. And it's one of those things where not only do the ritual vessels give you a bunch of favor by using them on a map, but it also just makes better rewards spawn. And so you'll get a totally juiced map. You know, you'll chuck, Beyond and Delirium on it, throw as many of
Grün ist
these
ja wieder da.
vessels as you can in there, and
Grad
just have an
bei
absolutely
Twitch gerade
insane time,
reingeschaut.
and then get a boatload of tribute, and really hope that you have good rewards in the window, and they will be better than average by that point. So, I'm not guaranteeing you'll see a hit under then. I'm sure many people won't do. In fact, most people won't do. But you never know.
I
Eden
instantly saw the
Headhunter.
potential here for like some sort of infinite loops. I'm wondering if you've counteracted that. The ritual vessels apply the captured monsters to all ritual sites in a new map. If you use a ritual vessel on the new map that is already enhanced, do you capture more and then can take that to the next map and then add infinitum?
We thought of that one. You can only use ritual vessels if you haven't used any on the map that you're playing. So it has to be on a vanilla ritual site.
Okay, so it's kind of like a one-on-one off sort of deal.
Yeah, which honestly isn't a problem. It'll be totally fine.
Okay.
Der sieht richtig geil aus. Holy shit, ich freue mich so auf die Liga, Leute.
That's one of the advantages of having the extra month, right? Like our goal was to release this in December, and we've taken extra time to actually, QA stuff as thoroughly as we can do, and to think of these things and put time into balancing it and making it good and making a good announcement stream, and it's been really helpful.
Yeah. You had an extra month or two, roughly.
Yeah, 1 month, of extra time. And sure, I mean, there's still things being tweaked, right? Like, people were away over, Christmas and New Year during that time, and not everything was finished at exactly the point we wanted to a month ago, but it's certainly very smooth sailing through that period while we're working on 3.14 at the same time as putting finishing touches and testing on 3.13. Like, I believe that we have a 99% functional alpha build being deployed today for the alpha testers to start giving us a week of feedback on. And I know it sounds crazy for us to be making a big deal about alpha testers having a week to test it, but normally we're like, we're launching tomorrow. It's not done. The league's turned off. The bosses are turned off. Go. And there's nothing to test apart from does it crash. But now we actually have every single thing is there kind of
Pork, Leute, die haben eine
situation for
Woche.
alpha. Though it's worth noting, while I'm
Eine
talking
Woche
about alpha,
Testzeit. Glaubt ihr das?
because there's various competitions and that kind of stuff being arranged for league launch, and obviously alpha testers would have an advantage. One of the rules that we're putting in place is if you've played on alpha for a given expansion, you're not eligible to receive prizes. And so that's a big decision that alpha testers are going to have to make, where if they're actually like a top tier streamer who wants to compete, they probably shouldn't be signing up for the thing that gets them a competitive advantage.
Absolutely.
So if you've had a chance to pre-play the content, you won't be able to win prizes. You can
Okay,
still
Leute,
compete,
der
but,
hat's quasi bestätigt. Es gibt ein
You
Race.
don't actually get anything for winning.
Es
And
gibt
so
ein Race.
that's our attempt at making sure that with a
Er hat's
properly
quasi
functional alpha
bestätigt.
testing program, we have a degree of fairness in there.
Nice.
That's really like surprising and awesome to hear. Like, because I feel like this has always been like a little thing in the background that's never really been fully acknowledged. That's really awesome to hear.
And I want to emphasize, because I can already see my email box blowing up. please do not email me or other staff members asking for alpha access. It doesn't work that way. Like, we literally have a policy of if you ask, you're not getting it, kind of, right? So we have ways of selecting people. As the program continues to function better, we will add more people, but we'll do it in a fair way that gives people a chance to apply, or we'll select them based on their merits. And the best way to become an alpha tester is provide consistent bug report feedback on the main site. We invite people by looking at who is just giving us great feedback and putting time in. Alpha testing is not a prestige thing. It's something which is almost like an unpaid job, you know? And thank you to the alpha testers for their feedback and unpaid work there.
Unpaid work, genau.
Good stuff. Just a couple more questions before we move on to some questions from the chat. With the rework to the harvest system, removing the gardening side of things,
Okay.
how will the Ashabi quest and fight happen, or has she retired?
So you'll randomly encounter a Shabi relatively rarely. So you'll stumble in there expecting to get choices of crafting options, and there's the tree ready to go with the Ashabi fight.
Okay.
Okay, so it's
It's
just kind of a
random.
random spawn thing now.
Infrequently, yes.
Okay.
Shabi
In
fight.
heist,
We rebalance to rewards and stuff, of course, to compensate for this.
Gotcha. So to heist now, in the meta for getting the most value out of the system really became centered around the duplication of extremely valuable blueprints and running them infinitely for massive amounts of currency. Is anything happening that will affect this?
So I want to clarify that when Ziggy says duplication, he means through legitimate game mechanics. There are a couple
Yes.
of ways of copying the blueprints. And so, this is not an exploit-filled game if anyone is watching and worried about that. But yeah, no, it's totally fine. There are mechanics that let you split the blueprints, where the problem with that wasn't so much that the base blueprint was a good one that was being split, because there was a cost to splitting it. It was the fact you could fully reveal every single aspect of it, and then that would just carry on to the copied copy. And so the first change we're making here is that the split copies do not have any reveals. They're basically like, the rewards are the same, but they're entirely unrevealed again. And so you can continue exactly the same strategy if you have enough reveals for every single copy and enough markers to achieve that. And that's quite a big cost. That makes it significantly less economically insane to do it, but it still makes it good to do it. Like, it still means that if you put the effort into finding the perfect blueprint, having the master copy, going and putting effort into getting the ingredients you need to be able to split it, like the fossils or the beasts and stuff, you can still profit from this, but it's not quite as crazy. In addition, there's significant rebalance that went into the rewards, especially around those top tier blueprints. So the currency one is less insane, for example, and we're pretty happy with where this is. And when the community finds something awesome and profitable like that, we don't want to just turn it off. We want to find a place where it now has a good good location in the game.
Aber Haste ist.
And so we're more happy with this from a balance point of
Haste
view.
ist
We think
gut,
that it will
aber
still
auch
be
Rippy.
potentially a good strategy for some
Ich bin
players to
eigentlich
do, but it won't be
zufrieden.
a
Ich glaube,
ridiculous
wenn wir das
strategy that
selten
creates a
jetzt
lot of drawbacks
treffen,
for the
dann
rest of the
nerven die
community.
Türen auch vielleicht nicht so sehr und
Alright,
dann
good
ist es
stuff.
vielleicht
We have
okay.
some questions from chat now. Thank you all for submitting your questions. First one comes in from Notcakes. Will Atlas passive trees be tied to certain regions? So will Beyond, for example, only be available on the Lex Proxima region and no other?
I believe so. I'm just going to double check this with my guys. That's true, right? Okay. Yeah, so most mechanics appear on a few regions, but yes, it is true that if you want to do Beyond on, say, Glennet Cairns or whatever, if it's not there, then you do not
so
have
habe
the
ich es auch
ability to
verstanden.
specialize beyond.
Also du
in
musst
that
schon
region.
auf ein
And so the
spezifisches
experiment
Gebiet
we're trying
gibt's
here
nur.
is allowing people to specialize on certain areas of the Atlas. It's not a global thing where you're just juicing your entire Atlas at once. You will have to find maps in that region. Of course, this can change over time. Give us feedback as you play. We think it's actually quite fun this way. It's certainly a more advanced way of doing it than what we could have done at face value, but we try to do it the interesting way rather than just say broadly a whole Atlas is juiced.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for things not being fully homogenized, not all being the same. Provides like interesting strategies and stuff that comes out of that. So it's good to see that. I imagine this also gives you another like lever that you can change in the future to shake up the Atlas. Instead of just moving maps around, you can
Ist halt
move
problematisch.
what regions have
Man
what
ist dann
things,
quasi
which
fest
become
auf eine
more
Strategie. Da muss man halt
Absolutely. Yeah, it'll be
Regret Ops
really interesting
benutzen,
to see
diese
how it
neuen.
pans out based on people's actual activity when they play it.
All right.
Also man kann nicht
Arthur
Beyond.
Eva
Ja,
asks,
weiß ich nicht.
as this
Doch,
league is
eigentlich
boss
schon. Ne?
driven, will there be any rebalance of XP or drops for boss encounters, as it will take way more time for such encounters, like the enhanced bosses, for example?
Do you guys have any comments? We haven't put any work into changing the experience and drops for those bosses, though we are careful to make sure that they're in a good place. If we saw any problems, we would fix it.
XP wäre
We haven't
gut.
seen there to be any issues
XP
there.
ist das Allerwichtigste, das hat Haste bewiesen nochmal.
Yeah, the team don't think it's going to take a lot longer. Most people get their boss fights done relatively quickly.
All right. Vice versa, 951 asks, can the Maven witness unique map bosses? If so, can there boss-specific loot drop in the boss rush?
No, you can't witness unique map bosses. That's something we certainly discussed and tried to achieve, but there are significant logistical issues on that one, so that's a thing for later.
Yeah, I imagine there'd be some pretty insane ones. Like some of those bosses have immunity during certain periods and stuff. We have to move them around the map and stuff. So yeah. Knockcake's got 2 questions. Will Atlas passive trees be tied to certain regions? So,
That's a
wait,
repeat of the other
that is
question.
a repeated question. Oops, never mind. Casually Stoned asks, what order of rarity are we talking about with the new influence Maven Orb? Something like Influence Exalt? Mirrors?
They're estimating around the Awakener's Orb level. We certainly want it to be pretty punchy.
Makes sense since it's, I imagine, a drop from her fight.
That's a good assumption to make.
That's a very clever non-answer there, Chris.
Yeah, oh no, it's only sense bit as an Act 1.
Okay.
Neue Orb klingt
Sylphia
sweet.
asks,
Ja,
we
ich
get
habe
skill
Awakener
points for
Orb
each of the
zweimal
8 Atlas
gehabt
skill trees,
bisher
or do
und
we just get
zweimal
to
nicht
rank choose
verwendet.
who we allocate them?
Ich weiß nie,
It's
was
all
ich
on a
mit
per
den
region
Items machen soll.
basis.
Das sind
So
halt
you
so
can completely
krasse
max out a single region
Endgame-Items.
potentially before you touch the
Da
other
will
ones
man
if
so
you
ein
choose
perfektes
to.
Item
So to
kreieren und bis dahin
specifically
ist
answer
mein
the
Charakter
question,
schon tot immer.
as you do the multi-boss fights in a given region, you get points for that
Bis halt
particular
Level
region's
99, wenn
trees.
das passiert in Solo Cellphone.
Attacking my own question on there, roughly where does this line up? Is this like Awaken at 8, we're likely to have all the skill points unlocked, or is it significantly longer than that in terms of a tail of content?
How do you guys feel about that?
Oh, das ist eine gute Frage. Wichtig fürs Race.
Okay, yeah, so they clarify that Awaken at 8 is about a good estimate for all regions, all trees, but to get all the points in a single region could be a fair while before that.
Ach,
Okay, so
früher
it's
als
like a
Awakener
tail
8.
thing that you can focus on, like
Mm.
unlocking. It's like
Okay,
you're
also ist das doch ein Wochenend-Race.
settling into
Das ist gut,
unlock
dann
your
kann ich es
longer-term
vielleicht doch
strategies
probieren,
kind of
Leute.
thing.
Yeah, and it honestly depends on what you're prioritizing, right? Like you're going to prioritize the regions with things you want to be playing, and so you'll probably get those significantly further ahead than the ones where you're just doing it because you might occasionally play a map in that region and you don't really care about those mechanics.
Oder habe ich das gerade falsch verstanden?
Same old asks, a rather interesting question. Can you drop craftable watchstones before you get all the normal watchstones, thus amplifying your progression or speeding it up?
The craftable ones are super end game rewards. Can you guys clarify? Yeah, you technically can. I mean, you may not have all of your 32 watchstones by the time that you start to get craftable ones. But yeah, the craftable ones are meant to be mostly coming after the normal ones.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
and you also
wir
pay
wissen
for
halt
them,
nicht,
right? Like
wie
you
der
could
Boss
over
zu
actually
spawnen
doing
ist,
something
ganz
else and
genau.
then
Ob man
fill up
jedes
your
Gebiet
Atlas that way,
freigeschaltet
that's what
haben
you feel is
muss
the
und
best
erst
plan.
dann kommt sie, oder kommt sie in
Alright.
einem Gebiet
Zen21
random oder
asks,
so?
does the tier of the map bosses
Ich hoffe, es
affect
ist
the
nicht
captured
random.
boss, like how watchstones alter tiers of maps in Retches? This
Bis
in
1
reference
to
to
also.
Ritual.
Ja,
in
das ist
Ritual.
schon ziemlich krass. Auf jeden Fall.
I'm failing to parse this question mentally.
So if you capture a boss and mobs in like tier 10, does that affect if you apply it to like a tier 5 map? Does that make them really dangerous, or does it scale
Right.
to the map that you apply it to, I guess?
Good question. Right. It inherits the area level of the map that you captured it in.
Oh, okay. So pay attention to that then if you like trade for them.
Yeah.
With respect to the Maven.
Yes. So that's with respect. Right. So with respect to Ritual, it inherits the level of the one you captured, and with regard to the Maven, it has a fixed level per encounter.
Okay, gotcha.
So are you saying that the 3, 4, 5, and so on are at fixed? Yeah. Okay.
So the 10 one is tier 16 equivalent.
Yeah. So when you're fighting 10 bosses at the same time, they're going to be tier 16 equivalently scaled ones, regardless of whether it was a low tier map that you captured it in. Oh, and
High tier maps.
yeah, you have to capture them in high tier maps in that case.
Okay.
It's amazing the number of border cases that I don't get exposed to when working on this, that the guys who are physically setting them actually understand.
Yeah, I'll mention if you guys have like pretty technical questions, a lot of that stuff is really often answered in the kind of FAQ that's released a little bit closer to launch as well.
Yeah, Bex is looking into how much community confusion there is, and we'll release an FAQ if necessary. It's partly that we're hoping that this Q&A helps solve most of the stuff, because it's a good opportunity to clarify things and explain it in plain English and so on. But, there'll probably be fine details we need to clarify afterwards.
I thought this was a good idea just because my first feeling after watching the video that I was just like super overwhelmed and it was hard to like process everything just because of the sheer amount of info in that like 30-minute reveal. So
Yeah.
it was a pretty good idea for that. Hopefully people are kind of like settling into it.
Should we have slowed it down and like spread it out over an hour and just be chill about it as we go, or is it good to have that pace of content?
I think it's great for people to be like overwhelmed and freaking out and their heads exploding. They have like a week to
Ja,
get
aber die
used to it
Frage
all
ist
and
so ein
figure it
bisschen,
all
kommt
out
sie
and
bei
learn
10
it
Bossen?
eventually.
We did it
Oder
on
also
most
nach
people's
den
time
10
and there was a
Bossen,
lot to
nachdem
cover,
man
so
die
we just got
besiegt
right
hat?
into it.
Garantiert? Oder muss
Yeah,
man das
totally.
5,
And we
6,
have
7,
this
8 Mal
downtime
machen?
and then Bay class
Darauf kommt es
afterwards
halt an.
to unwind a little
Also
bit.
wann kommt der
So
Endboss? Also
that's
diese
great.
Melody oder wie die heißt.
Snooziest
Selbst.
asks, who gets the choice/drop in ritual when multiplayer game?
Ich habe ich gerade nicht
Or,
zugehört.
like when playing with friends.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is one of the leagues where it's the instance owner who gets to choose the rewards, and so
Okay.
you do not all get your own tribute. You do have to like work out what you're getting as a group and to share it, and it's usually based on implementation detail that we decide that. We ideally want rewards to be shared across the group where possible, but if it doesn't make sense for how we're actually structuring the league, then sometimes it's the outcome. And when doing it, we just make sure that there are enough rewards for playing as a group and you get the ability to share it out as you choose. If your group are bad at sharing, I would encourage you to take turns opening the maps so you each get the chance to be bad at sharing with your friends.
Wow. True though. Clemmy Clem asks, will there be sextant mods that affect the amount of ritual points you get whenever ritual mechanic spawns in the map?
This one.
Yeah. If the sextants spawn packs and the packs spawn within the ritual site, then it absolutely does affect it. In terms of actually adding mods to sextants that affect rituals directly, that's something we would do if ritual goes core later, potentially. We have not confirmed or decided, have no idea whether it's going core. It depends a lot on what people say. They like it, don't like it, you know?
It's significant to know that, like, just enhancing the map, effectively, you will add extra packs to the ritual site as well, and that it's not fully isolated.
Yeah.
It's Parsalien asks, are there always 3 rituals per zone, or does the number of rituals per zone increase as you progress through the story, or does it change in other ways? I'll add on.
My understanding is it does get larger. Let me just clarify with the guys.
Scales very slightly.
Yeah, so it does scale very slightly. So the range of number of rituals you can get does get higher as you get into higher tier.
Okay, also man muss nach 10 kommt sie dann
You do
auf
want it to
einmal,
stay
ja?
simple at the beginning
Ist
of
das
the
das, was ich
storyline,
da
so you're not
rauslese?
having to do, like, 6 ritual fights
Wir
in
schauen
one
uns
go
das
or
gleich
something,
nach dem
but
Talk nochmal selbst
by
an.
the time you're handling red tier maps, I'm sure you're getting quite a lot.
It reminds me of like a cross between like shrines and a beyond, a breach kind of encounter. So having like 3 or something seems like a lot of extra monsters per zone. What is the range here? Is it like 3 to 6, 3 to 5,
What's
1
the
to
cap?
3?
Okay. Like 4 is the cap, right? Yeah, 4 is the cap. Currently. This is the kind of thing we're iterating on while doing our testing. You never
Yeah.
know, the alpha testers might have feedback. You'll probably find that 4 is a reasonable number when you try it out.
All right. That does seem like a lot. Burke Jam asks, are there going to be stash tabs for heist, harvest, and ritual?
We do not have any new stash tabs at the moment. I don't think ritual needs to have a stash tab.
Yeah,
You
what
get
is
some
stash?
vessels, but they're real rare, and you kind of use them as you get them.
I guess like one item doesn't really warrant a tab for them.
Yeah, we've been pretty clear about our policy for tabs now, where we've explained that if there's mandatory progression items, we'll provide free storage for them, and if there's optional reward style stuff that you would normally just store in regular tabs, then we may provide purchasable specialized storage for that for people that want it. And we're trying to find a sweet spot here where tabs aren't mandatory, but at the same time we can still fund development of the game.
I think we have a question from Amy here. What are your thoughts on support characters, for example, Aurobots and stuff like that? And how would you like to move forwards with that archetype in the future?
Well, I think it's really important that players have a lot of different ways of playing, and it's even interesting to see within our team how many people like playing support characters, including very, very senior members of the team, Mark. So we definitely want to make sure it's fully supported, and I think that because the person who has the title of game director on Path of Exile plays support characters, you're probably likely to see stuff in the future. What he's planning, I honestly don't know. That's above my pay grade.
I feel like they are generally insanely strong, and it's just like not that many people get into them for it to be a big problem. Whereas if like half the player base was playing support characters, it would be something you'd have to tone down.
Matt clarifies there's no bias whatsoever, but
Oh yeah.
philosophically, I see Path of Exile as a game with many, many ways to play. If you want to sit and trade with people, just sit there flipping currency. That's a valid way to play. It generates currency. If you want to sit there working out the perfect heist, if you want to sit there, taking advantage of the new league content and trying to be the first person to work out how to get the best rewards, that is a valid way to play the game. And playing an aura character that doesn't kill monsters directly, also a great way to play the game. And I think that providing more avenues beyond just killing monsters helps with action RPGs quite a lot, because there are 1,000 ways to kill monsters already. It's good to add a few hundred other ways to play too.
Great stuff. Stale Humor asks, what is your favorite skill gem change? What skill gem are you looking forward to using and seeing used by the community?
There's this look blankness when I realize I haven't actually gone through the patch notes yet myself.
Fair.
Mark and Andrew, do you have any favorite skill gem changes that you're aware of in this particular patch? Okay, what happened with Scorching Ray?
Cast time got half.
Cast time got halved. Okay, so there's some
Mhm.
excitement about Scorching Ray. They had a mandate basically, and not these
Scorching
particular
Ray.
developers, but the designers working
Ob
on
Righteous
skills had a
Fire
mandate
wieder spielbar
basically of,
ist?
buff as
Hm.
many skills in impactful ways as possible. And I think there are 40 existing ones,
Neben
which is kind of
Minions
an
mein,
understated part of
ja,
this
mein
expansion.
zweites
There
Main-Bild.
could have been a lot more attention put on that, but the goal is basically that no one knows what's best to play now. There's 19 sets of Ascendancy changes, 40 skills buffed. It should mix the meta up a lot more than most normal
sagt
expansion
Metashake.
releases do, and hopefully for a decent amount of time. Like, I don't think this one will be solved quite so quickly.
Schauen wir mal,
Alright.
ob
World
Assassin's
Creator
Strain.
asks, bearing in mind we're going to have a huge Ascendancy rework, what about the Scion? What are your thoughts on
Sag mal,
Scion in
Champion
general?
wird bestimmt
The Scion
genervt.
has been reworked as part of the
Dakota?
expansion. So basically all 19 Ascendancy classes got attention, where we sat there and said, what are we doing with this tree? How are we changing it? 3 of them had quite large implementation-based sets of changes. The Inquisitor, Elementalist, and Deadeye actually had some serious amount of work, but the other ones at least had us going through and reviewing each thing and changing stuff. And so the amount varies from class to class, but we made sure the Scion was included. I personally am generally relatively happy with her place, and this is partly because if we make her too powerful, she jumps right ahead quite quickly, and so it's in a pretty good place, but we don't want her to lag behind.
Jard Extreme wants to know if you're going to implement the trade website as an in-game thing.
I don't see harm in doing this, and I kind of do think that it would be a positive thing to have the ability to embed a browser in the game so that you can directly link stuff, you can click on people's names to automatically whisper them. It's not at all against our philosophy with trade, right? Like, we're not against making things easier from a convenience point of view. It's more about, the fundamentals of how trade works that we have a bit of philosophical views on. Having said that, there are interesting issues with getting it working in-game to do with embedding browsers and the right middleware for that.
Meinst wegen Ideen?
issues
Naja,
that we just
Assassin's
haven't got to that
Strain
yet.
ist halt immer noch
It
das dominanteste Bild. Vor allem, wenn
fascinating
Harvest dabei ist, dann wird das
complicated
halt
development
wieder
gets when you're targeting
das
multiple
Nummer 1
platforms
Bild
and
sein.
consoles, and let's say
Bei einer
hypothetically you pick
Bossliga
some
vielleicht
middleware from
weniger,
embed
aber ich
websites in
glaube,
your
so
game,
viel
and that
Boss
middleware
ist
may
das
not
gar nicht, wie
work on,
man
like,
denkt.
M1 ARM processor Max, for example.
Ich glaube,
and our
Idee
Mac
Blight
users
ist immer
get
noch
upset at
ein
that, or
Top-Kandidat.
it just requires a bit of work to get that kind of stuff going, and in the meantime, people can alt
Wie
tab
gesagt, vor allem mit Harvest.
All right, good stuff.
or command key tab or whatever.
Is there any thing you really want to point out to people, like your favorite thing from the announcement, since you probably combed over this a few times now? Anything that really stood out that you really want to mention to people? What was your favorite?
It's actually pretty difficult to pick what the favorite is here, because the League itself is one of the best combat focused ones we've done for a while. It's just a pure risk versus reward kind of thing. The player chooses how deep they want to go with the rituals, and in the end game they can choose how deep they want to stack the amount of monsters, and the tribute is literally costing on various items from throughout Path of Exile's history and some new ones. And the deferral system makes some very, very interesting choices there, because you'll see really expensive stuff, and putting it on lay-by over time kind of makes it cost more over time, but you do actually get to afford it even if you can't today. And so that will be an interesting experiment. So the League itself obviously wants a big expansion to go with it, but is probably going to be one of the more, condensed fun ones that we've done for
Ja,
quite some
ich freue
time.
mich auf die Liga.
Very true Path of
Nicht
Exile.
nur auf den
The
Atlas,
expansion
sondern wie
just
gesagt, die
adds so much to
Expansion
the
ist auch
endgame, and
interessant.
honestly, like, my amount of late
Also
endgame
wirklich
Path of
interessant.
Exile play recently has been relatively low.
Diese
so
Leser
I don't
machen mir
even
Angst
understand the
übrigens,
depth of the
wegen meinen
expansion. Every
Minions.
time we're discussing it in the team, I realize that it's way more than I thought it was, and that's going to be exciting. So I'm expecting that to have quite a long impact on the endgame for some time.
Also meine
And
Minions
one
könnten
thing I
sterben
wanted
bei
to really
diesen
make sure
Lesern.
with this expansion was that the amount of metagame mix-up, as we were
Macht
just
mir Angst.
talking, was quite high. We really didn't want it to be that there's a league and there's an expansion, but you're playing the same build you were playing last league. And so I think that the unsung hero of it is going to be the fact that there's a lot of new viable builds and craziness that's going to be happening there.
Awesome
Ich hoffe,
stuff.
die
Also, you
nerven
made
eine
golems
Idee,
really
keine
strong.
Ahnung.
Just wanted to point that out.
Idee ist
That's
eigentlich
awesome.
zu stark für solche Ligen.
And there are a lot of ascendancies and a lot of region trees and a lot of other stuff that we get to reveal over the next week.
Fantastic stuff. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for the Q&A, Chris. We're
Okay.
going to take a short break here on the live stream and then head on over to Bay Class
so
to
much.
unpack a little bit.
Thanks everyone for watching.
Ja, krass.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Leute. Also das war der Talk. Jetzt kommt nur noch B-Class und das streame ich jetzt nicht nochmal. Ich will mir jetzt noch kurz ein paar Sachen anschauen. Auf die Schnelle.
But it's not your own sacred grove.
So,
It's an
über den hier, Harvest. Das habe ich etwas überhört.
established one that has a full complement of plants ready to harvest, fight, and craft with. The grove contains several
Okay, das
pairs
habe ich
of
doch schon
harvests to
gehört.
choose
Also die
between.
haben im Endeffekt nicht gesagt, wie selten es ist. Wir wissen, dass das, glaube ich, bei gelben Maps erst anfängt. Und dann findet man einen Garten, der schon fertig gebaut ist. Und dann kann man sich Belohnung aussuchen.
Each displaying the details of the fight and the corresponding crafting options. You can only pick one of each pair, so carefully choose which crafting options are best for you, defeat the monsters, and
Die
use their
Monster
light
waren übrigens nie sehr gefährlich. Also eigentlich kann man das immer ruhig
force to
machen.
perform the crafts.
Bis auf ein paar Ausnahmen. Wenige Ausnahmen. Aber der Garten ist derselbe.
If you're strong enough to kill the monsters, each grove represents quite a lot of
Aber ja, man kann wieder auf die Truhe, also es hat sich eigentlich nicht so viel verändert. Ist alles das gleich geblieben, bloß dass man jetzt vorgefertigte Monster hat. Somit im Endeffekt kann man nicht sehr viel gleichzeitig stacken vielleicht oder so. Es kommt halt darauf an, wie häufig man das Ding trifft. Wenn das 10% sind, 10%, ist immer noch OP 10%, glaube ich. Also dann wird sich vielleicht lohnen, einen mega schnellen Charakter zu bauen. Einen mega krassen Farmer, der Tier 6er Map durchrusht und einfach nur Harvest farmt. Also irgendeine Möglichkeit, Harvest zu fokussieren. Ich weiß gar nicht, haben die das gesagt? Gab es beim Atlas Harvest? Darauf habe ich jetzt gar nicht mehr in Erinnerung. Also es gab was? Beyond? Legion? Alva? Strongboxes? Incursion? Strongboxes? Harvest, genau. Ja, es gab Harvest. Harvest Monster in Area grant 200% increased experience. Boah. Harvest Plants in Area have 50% chance to spawn an additional monster. Holy shit, ist das gut. Area have plus 2 chance to contain a Sacred Grove. Auch gut. Area have plus 2% Sacred Grove. Harvest Area Double Bonus. Okay, also das wird das Gebiet sein, auf das man wahrscheinlich als Solo-Self-Spieler oder Allgemeinspieler vielleicht sich fokussiert, Leute. Das ist so gut. Das ist so gut. Ich meine, Legion ist auch OP. Stellt euch vor, man bekommt vor Level 90 ein Legion-Juwel. Ein Legion-Juwel ist das overpoweredste Item im Moment, im Spiel. Im Moment. Wegen Berserker und so weiter, ne? Defense-technisch. Also defense-technisch gibt es nichts Stärkeres als so ein Legion-Juwel. Aber so ein komplettes Set an vollen Items, die man hat, ist auch sehr, sehr mächtig. Okay, die sind noch nicht am Labern. So, PoE News. Es gibt bestimmt schon die Seite. Lass uns die mal kurz anschauen. Okay. Also, in 7 Tagen ist es soweit. In Konsolen 12 Tagen. So, in Perfect Access, you've been able more control of your Endgame. Also man hat die komplette Kontrolle des Endgame, vom Endgame. Man hat einen neuen Boss, Maven, sieht übrigens richtig geil aus. Ich mag das Design des neuen Bosses. Sehr, sehr schön, finde ich. When the Elder was sealed, and beyond the part of red, don't pay attention in the direction. Also die haben bemerkt, dass Elder weg ist. Und die erste, der wir jetzt begegnen, sowas wie den Elder, ist halt diese Maven. Und sie ist halt so eine Art Beobachter. Und sie beobachtet uns und stellt uns quasi ihre Aufgaben, indem wir mehrere Bosse fighten. Und wenn wir es zuerst schaffen, wie viel waren das? Hier steht das irgendwo, oder? 5 Bosse, 6 Bosse und dann 10 Bosse und dann sie selbst. Ich frage mich halt, kann man sie sofort bei jedem, kann man sie wirklich immer auswählen? Also jede Map plus 1? Das heißt 5, also im Endeffekt würde man nach 30 Maps sie schon haben, oder? Also ich glaube, sie trifft man das erste Mal ab Tier 6 oder so. Aber ich weiß nicht, das klingt sehr schnell, dass man sie sehr schnell bekommt. Wenn man wirklich jede Map sie als Beobachterin haben kann. Das muss ich noch genau rausfinden, das weiß ich noch nicht. Also wenn man sie jede Map rein theoretisch auswählen kann, sie als Beobachter und so mit dem Boss speichert und dann quasi nach 5 Maps kriegt man den ersten Fight, nach 6 Maps kriegt man ihn danach wieder und dann nach 10 Maps kriegt man den nächsten und dann würde man sie schon haben. Also im Endeffekt 20, 30 Maps und dann wäre es fertig. Atlas Unlock. Und dann ging's, ja, wenn man das komplette Gebiet quasi irgendwie frei, wenn man das geschafft hat, also pro Gebiet muss man das halt fighten und dann kriegt man eben in dem Gebiet die Ascendancy-Punkte. Also wenn man die ersten 4 Bosse besiegt hat, dann kriegt man eben die ersten 2 Punkte. Oh, sie haben schon angefangen.
What about you, Niggy?
Äh,
I mean, I'm with Rise on this.
okay.
Great stuff. I was just surprised.
Okay, Leute, wir machen das so. Ich werde morgen wahrscheinlich dann näher, werden wir uns nochmal damit beschäftigen und einen zweiten Teil zu meinem Talk machen, wo ich ein bisschen mehr drauf eingehe. Ich hätte nicht gedacht, dass das so viel sein wird. Ich wollte eigentlich viel mehr mit euch das drüber gehen. Ich werde das trotzdem auf YouTube hochladen und dann sehen wir uns dann einfach morgen, wo ich den zweiten Teil dann und wir schauen uns dann alles nochmal an und besprechen. Ich bespreche dann alles, was ich hier bei B-Class gehört habe. Dann, wer jetzt hier das verpasst, dann werde ich dazu auch eine Zusammenfassung machen und dann, ja, ein etwas knackigeres Video. Also, ich sag mal danke fürs Reinschalten und ja, man sieht sich dann, ne? Haut rein, bleibt sauber. Ciao, ciao.